Hey all, how are y'all? It's me, Ella. Hey guys, and welcome back to a new video. And in this video, I am going to be talking about my favorite black shows, movies, and documentaries in honor of Juneteenth. So, without further ado, let's get into the So, the first shows I want to quickly breeze over are the shows that I have talked about back in my favorite shows and movies of last year. So I will link that video in the description so you guys can get that full synopsis of the shows. So got my notes here, let's get into it. So the shows I have mentioned, first show was All American, where a football player named Spencer James transfers from Crenshaw to Beverly in honor of a better and safer life. And another show I also talked about was my favorite show that I have mentioned a lot, Black Lightning, a show about a high school principal named Jefferson Pierce coming out of retirement when his daughters are kidnapped by the 100 gang, and eventually he returns as Black Lightning, and his two daughters, Anissa and Jennifer, become the superheroes Thunder and Lightning. So it's a show about a black superhero family. The next show I want to breeze over was Blood and Water, which was a South African drama about a 16-year-old girl named Pulang is celebrating her 17-year-old sister Fume's birthday that went missing before Pulang was born. So she comes across this girl at a party that looks similar to her sister Fume, and so she transfers schools and gets closer to the girl named Fakile and tries to figure out if Fakile is her sister. Then the next show I want to breeze over was Family Reunion, a show about a black family from Seattle moving down towards Columbus, Georgia to get closer to their family and their black heritage, and a whole lot of wild shenanigans go on there. Another show that I mentioned. Let me see, anything else I mentioned? I'm pretty sure that's it. All the shows I have just mentioned, All American, Black Lightning, Blood and Water, and Family Reunion, are all available to stream on Netflix. Now, the first show I want to get into was Sister Sister. I watched this show last fall when it first came on Netflix, and it's about these two twins, Tia and Tamara, bumping into each other at the mall, and eventually Tia's adoptive mom and Tamara's adopted dad come together and make this one big happy separated family, and they get into a whole bunch of shenanigans. So if you want to watch Sister Sister, it's on Netflix. The next show I want to get into is Raising Dion, which is a show about after his dad's death, a young boy named Dion Warren discovers that he has powers, and his mom Nicole is trying to keep him safe from all the dangers because there's the storm that took his father Mark's life, and she wants to be extra protective of his son. So he meets another mentor on the way, and you won't believe who the villain is, but I'll save that if you want to watch the show because it is on Netflix, and I'm so excited for season 2. Hopefully it comes out later this year. Now the first movie I want to get into is a classic, which is my favorite animated movie of all time, The Princess and the Frog, which is about a young girl named Tiana, who's trying to save money to open her own restaurant since her father didn't get to, and it takes place in 1920 in New Orleans. And so her best friend Charlotte is having this party, and she comes across this frog who turns out to be a prince, which is inspired by not only a real chef in Louisiana named Leah Chase, Rest in peace to her. But it's also inspired by the Frog Prince. So of course, you know, if you kiss a frog, he's supposed to turn into a prince. But that turns them both into frogs, and they go on a journey to become humans again. My own issue is, why was she a black woman only for 30 minutes of the movie? Disney, do better. Do better. But if you want to watch The Princess and the Frog, it is on Netflix. And I will see if it's on Disney Plus. If it is, I will list it there. But I know it will be on Netflix until next month. The next documentary I actually want to get into is Homecoming by Beyonce, which takes a deep dive into Beyonce bouncing back from giving birth to her two adorable twins, Rumi and Sir Carter, and she is preparing for her iconic 2019 Coachella performance. So if you want to watch that documentary, it is on Netflix. And then speaking of Beyonce, hey, the next film I want to get into is Black is King, which is a visual movie based on Beyonce's 2019 album The Gift, which features several African artists. And the album literally is a gift. It is a visual movie dedicated to the gift. Also, Beyonce went to many West African countries to film this movie and make a video with the artist. So if you want to watch this movie, it is on Disney Plus. The next show I want to get into is Moesha, which is a show about a teenage girl who is adjusting to her life after her mom passed away and adjusting to her new step family, and she gets into a lot of shenanigans with her family as well as her best friends Hakeem, Kim, and Nisi. So, and it juggles a lot of serious issues, but there's a lot of times where you will laugh your behind off. Same thing with Sister Sister. They talk about serious issues, but you will still laugh your behind off. And if you want to watch Moesha, it is on Netflix. Then the next show I want to get into is One-on-One. I am currently on season 4 of One-on-One. I'm prepared for that season 5 is going to be lackluster because I watched a documentary by the YouTuber Choice TV. I recommend go watch it, by the way. It is about a 14-year-old girl named Brianna Barnes goes to live with her dad in Baltimore for the first time, and so they have a whole bunch of daddy-daughter shenanigans, and it juggles a lot of serious issues as same thing as Sister Sister and Moesha. But if you want to watch One-on-One, it is on Netflix. And the next show I would get into is Everybody Hates Chris, which is basically a mockumentary series, kind of, but it's mostly a comedy about Chris Rock's life growing up as a black teenager in the Bed-Stuy area of Brooklyn, New York, and it takes place in the 80s, and Tyler James Williams, which is in a movie I am going to mention in a few minutes, is in it, as well as Terry Crews and Tashina Arnold. And yeah, it's a super funny show. The way it just makes fun of white racism is freaking genius, as well as Chris Rock's narration. I just love hearing his voice as he's narrating the episodes. So if you want to watch Everybody Hates Chris, I am pretty sure it's on Hulu. The next documentary I want to get into is I Am Not Your Negro, which is based on an unfinished book by the genius that was the late James Baldwin, which is basically, he was talking about how his life was after the deaths of his close friends Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. So if you want to watch the documentary, it is on Netflix. The next show I want to get into is The Proud Family, and it is on Disney Plus, about an African American family based on Petty Proud, which is also played by the talented actress Kyla Pratt. And she gets into a lot of wild situations with her family, as well as her friends Zoe, Dejanay, Sticky, and frenemy La Cienega Boulevardes. So if you want to watch the show, it's on Disney Plus. The next show I want to talk about is That's So Raven. That's So Raven, that aired in the early 2000s, and mostly Raven-Symoné really was the Beyonce of Disney. She really was. She carried Disney in the 2000s. A lot of people want to talk about, oh, Miley, Demi, and Selena are the queens of Disney. No. It's Raven. Raven and Hilary Duff ran the 2000s. So the show is about a teenage psychic named Raven Baxter that gets glimpses into the future, and she tries to stop what happens in the future, but she doesn't know when those exact moments take place. So she ends up misbehaving in wild situations. But it also talks about pretty serious topics as well. But That's So Raven was one of the shows that you didn't need the laugh track to start laughing, because everybody on that show was just naturally funny. So if you want to watch That's So Raven, it's on Disney Plus. Then the next movie I want to get into is Let It Shine, that also stars Tyler James Williams, Trevor Jackson, and Coco Jones, which is about an aspiring teen rapper, Cyrus, basically hides under the name Truth because his father is a pastor and thinks rap is of the devil. So his childhood friend Roxy has this contest. If you submit the song and we like you, we're going to give you a record deal, we're going to make you a star. So Cyrus sends this photo of him and his best friend Chris, and who does Roxy think Truth is when Cyrus sends in the tape? The cuter one, Chris. And so all because Cyrus couldn't cut out Chris, it turns into this bunch of mess filled in with an awesome soundtrack. So if you want to watch Let It Shine, it is on Disney Plus. Then the next movie I want to get into is Jump In, which stars Corbin Bleu and Keke Palmer, about a young teen bosser named Izzy comes in contact with his neighbor and friend Mary and basically thinks, oh, double dutch is stupid. Like, it's a little kid sport, it's not competitive, but eventually is convinced to join the Hot Chili Steppers, or yeah, the name is the Hot Chili Steppers in the future, and eventually decides that, double dutch isn't just a girl's thing, and eventually he incorporates his double dutch skills into boxing. So if you want to watch the movie, it's on Disney Plus. Let It Shine and Jump In are two of my favorite DComs, by the way, and two of the best. Then the next documentary I want to get into is the documentary 13th. I watched this last year, which basically tackles the 13th Amendment that supposedly abolished slavery. But if you don't know, that only means in the field and in the house. A lot of the stuff that you wear, a lot of the stuff that you sit at is made by prisoners that are paid less than $1 a day. So anytime you think of any Starbucks cup, any jeans, any desk, just know prisoners made that. And most of the time when black and brown folks are arrested, they're slaves in the prison system that barely get paid. So if you want to watch this amazing documentary, it's on Netflix. Then the next documentary I want to talk about was Say Her Name, Sandra Bland, which was a deep dive into the Sandra Bland case when she was pulled over and arrested and found dead in her cell less than a week later. People tried to say it was suicide, but she had a lot of suspicious marks on her back that looked like she was murdered. But unfortunately, the case was dropped. But it is a very, very interesting documentary to watch, and if you want to watch it, it's on HBO Max. You have a few more left. So, this was actually a book-turned movie, and it was called The Hate U Give, which was about an African-American teenager. Her name is Star Carter, and she goes to this party and reunites with her childhood BFF Khalil, but she, at this party, and eventually gunshots ring out at the party, and Khalil is trying to take Star home. They are pulled over by a racist white cop that kills Khalil, and Star spends this whole movie, of course, trying to grieve, but get justice for her friend and get justice for a lot of other people that are mistreated by the police. So if you want to watch the movie, it's on Hulu. It is pretty sad, but never stop fighting. And then the last film I want to get into, I am so mad that this movie was taken off Netflix, because most of Black romantic comedies are about their race. This is just about them happening to be Black and not focusing on their race. And this movie was called Always a Bridesmaid, about this woman named Corinna, which basically was always a bridesmaid. She was always going to her friends' weddings, but she wasn't actually the one getting married. So she meets this guy named Mark Randall, and eventually they fall in love. Corinna does some stupid crap, but it's a cute rom-com, and I will look up where you can watch that movie, since sadly it was taken off Netflix. And yeah, those were my favorite Black shows, movies, and documentaries to watch, and hopefully you check them out on those services. I love how these shows can be funny and also talk about serious topics such as racial profiling, interracial dating, racial unity, death of a parent, premarital sex, teen pregnancy, drug use, adultery, and etc. So this is the last video I am gonna make before my birthday, and I will be coming back at the end of the month with my second chit chat video. So the link to my favorite shows and movies of last year will be in there, as well as my last video in the description box, and go follow me on my social medias in the outro. Alright, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.